Oak.
Hello, Natalie Diaz.
Why, welcome back to another episode of Masterpiece Theatre.
Oh, fancy.
We should be fancy. Honestly, I remember taping this with Judy. Today you're going to meet Judy Jarka, a mama of 26 weekers. Mm-hmm. And I am always fascinated to speak to our moms of micro preemies. And they, to me, they are just a fountain of knowledge.
Yes.
And they have to go through things kind of the hard way. And it's unbelievable. Yeah. Do you know any 26 weekers?
I've worked with 26 weekers. And
weeker twins or single?
Yes, twins.
Really?
Twins, yes.
How big were they when they were born?
They were I don't know the exact weight, but they were a little over 1 pound each. And they were due, I want to say mid to late September, and they were born, I want to say early June.
Wow.
I know they didn't get out of the hospital until way after their due date. They were discharged around Halloween, so late October of that year, and I started working. Mom had hired me when she was 20 weeks pregnant.
Wow.
And just a few weeks later, she gave birth. So I worked with her via phone and text for a while, just getting her through, the NICU stay. And then when they came home, first one baby came home, and they were big when they got home. They were 9.5 pounds. They were big babies by the time they got home.
Wow.
They were big chunky monkeys. But they had a lot of GI issues, and Mom had a lot of anxiety. So she needed a lot of support.
Yeah, this is, I think in general, parents of twins always, of course, need a lot of support. But when you have micro preemies, that's a whole separate thing. So let's dig in. I'm dying for you to meet Judy. And I'm curious to know if your experience personally matches what Judy had, a lot of stuff that she'd been going through.
Oh.
All right. Are you ready to meet Judy?
Yes.
All right. Here she is. Hey, Judy. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to be here with you today.
It is wonderful to have you as well. Judy, I'm excited because, this is weird, right? So if you've listened to the Twiniversity podcasts, which you don't have to, no pressure, Judy. But for those of you out there, sometimes we have very sensitive topics like the one that we're going to discuss today. And I always am very afraid that I'm going to come off callous, but I'm not. I'm just so used to hearing things like this that it doesn't scare me. It doesn't freak me out. I know that it's just another version of somebody's story and that we're going to be okay. So while the whole world is having a panic attack over 26 weekers, I'm like, dude, hold my beer. Let me introduce you to 24 weekers, right?
Yes.
So for me, in my weird line of work, I know that there are some wonderfully exciting, invigorating, and hopeful stories that are out there, and Judy is one of them, which is why we want to introduce her to our Twiniversity family. So Judy is once again a twin mom, like everybody. Notice the trend. We're sticking to it. And she is a first-time mama to 26-weeker chicks. And so when they were born, as many 26 weekers are, they sometimes come with some additional issues because they are still supposed to be cooking in our tummies for quite a few weeks. But because they have no patience and they can't wait to come out and meet her, they decide that it's going to be like a Jack in the Box. Everybody's going to pop out, and now we have to deal with this. So, Judy, your puppies were born at 26 weeks. And how was the pregnancy up until that point?
Sure. I actually had a very good pregnancy, minimal complications. And I was going to the MFM biweekly. Everything was looking good. We were able to clear, thankfully, PTTS, which was fantastic news. Because of course, that's something I was worried about with having identical mono-di twins. And about 2 weeks later, I went in for my next ultrasound, where we discovered that twin 1 had maybe less than a centimeter of amniotic fluid, whereas twin 2 had 16 plus.
Mm.
centimeters of amniotic fluid. And so I was being watched very carefully. I was being monitored closely, and they deemed it as a rare case of TTTS.
Okay.
It was just the amniotic fluid. And so at 25 weeks, actually on St. Patrick's Day, I started experiencing contractions. And I knew that they were contractions just because of how close they were, how rhythmic it was. So I went in, I was put on magnesium fluid, everything was okay. And they sent me back home after several hours. They said, if I need to come back later. And so we did end up back at the hospital later on that evening, actually that night at 10 p.m. And they admitted me because I was 2 centimeters dilated at that point.
Okay.
And so what they thought was happening was that twin one was just experiencing everything because of the contractions, due to the fact that she did not have that amniotic fluid to kind of cushion her.
Mm-hmm.
And so the contractions were getting stronger. I had several of them throughout a week span or a week's worth of being in the hospital. And so I was on magnesium fluids for a week, on and off about 3 times. And finally, a week later, on Wednesday, March 24th, the girls were born. I was 4 centimeters dilated. And at that point, the OB/GYN decided that it was time. And so they were born. I did not have preeclampsia. I did not have any other medical complications or issues. It was just kind of happened that way. And so, they came on that Wednesday at 7:43 and 44 a.m.
Oh my gosh. Oh
at
my
less than 2 pounds.
At less than 2 pounds, these little puppies. Holy
Tiny.
smoke. Now, before they actually delivered, like I always ask moms, did they say like, okay, you're going to deliver today? Here's what's going to happen. Did anybody come in and kind of prep you for what the day is going to be? And by the way, for those of you that are listening, if you hear Judy moving around, or if you're watching this, she has twins, guys. So like, Judy, like, don't stress about that. I love when like guests are like it's literally, this is our life.
This is life.
It's fine. It's fine. You got to pick up a baby. You got to hold 17 of them. It doesn't matter. You got to whatever it is. So don't ever worry. If there's anybody who really kind of understands, it's literally us.
It's mom.
So I just don't want you to stress, because I feel like you're going to get stressed and I don't want that to happen.
Thank you. I appreciate that. No, the morning of, on the 24th, I started having really, really intense contractions again. The same, if not more so than when we first were admitted on St. Patrick's Day. And so the OB/GYN came in, it was 6 a.m. He checked me, and that's when he said that I was 4 centimeters dilated, and just told me right then and there that it was time.
That was it.
And that was it. And suddenly I had nurses flocking my room.
Oh, okay.
To do, either put in an IV or put in the catheter or check my blood pressure. And meanwhile, I'm sitting there hyperventilating.
Yeah.
Because there's so much going on. I was not expecting that kind of news, right? And so, but I had such a wonderful team. They really, really made sure that I was comfortable, ensuring that everything would be okay, that they're there. My husband was, of course, there too.
Good.
And so, yes, it was a very hectic morning, to say the least, but I had amazing hands on deck.
Oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
That's always what we want. I mean, there's sometimes like, if you're going to deliver early, sometimes like the NICU team will come in and be like, here's what's going to happen. This is going to be the plan. But not everybody has a minute like you did, where it kind of goes from like, boring day to birthday in, a matter of moments. So now when you get into the OR, you have your babies, A comes out, flying, thrown to the side, B comes out, flying, thrown to the side. I imagine, immediately kind of take them down to the NICU.
To the NICU.
Now, at that point, have you and your husband ever discussed like what was going to happen in this situation? Like, would he go with the girls or would he stay with you? Like, how did that moment go?
Sure. So that was actually discussed, like you said, in the moment. they were delivered. They were in the isolates. The nurses were working with them. They each had a neonatologist as well. There were 2 neos in the room, or in the OR.
Mm-hmm.
And so once they were all set up and ready to go, they just asked my husband if he wanted to go with, and one of the neonates, told them that usually one of the parents goes, just so that they can kind of see everything. They can discuss more in the room. He okayed it with me. I said, that's fine. So he went up, just because I wanted someone with our babies. I'm like, I'm okay. They're just going to stitch me back up.
Yeah.
I'll see you when I'm in recovery. And so that's what happened. He went up, he saw them get put into their room, and, they explained some more things to him. And then eventually he came back down, and he sat with me while I was recovering.
Okay. So now we know that, like, the thing that I really want to discuss today is I really want to discuss NEC, which, and like,
yes,
it's necrotizing enterocolitis, correct?
Yes.
I'm saying this. Okay.
Yes.
So this is really one of the, I think it actually is not one of the, I think it is the most common issue that happens with preemies. And it is a pretty significant, severe issue that has to be immediately addressed. So when did that kind of rear its head once the girls were here?
Sure. So it only impacted twin 2, which is Olivia. Mia, twin 1, was never impacted by it, which everyone was shocked by, just because they are identical. So at 29 weeks, it was April 13th to be exact. April 12th, we'll start with April 12th. We were there that evening. We did some kangaroo time with them. I had Mia, my husband had Olivia, and she was just unusually fussy, right? Nothing was really soothing her, whether she was in her isolette or in our arms, her pacifier. We tried everything. And just something wasn't right, and I felt it, and our primary night nurse felt it. So, we just tried to keep her as comfortable as possible, even once we did put her back in the isolette. And so we, ironically and coincidentally, happened to be staying at a hotel nearby for a few days within that week. One of our friends bought us a room just so that we're closer, because we do live an hour from the hospital. And so I truly believe everything does happen for a reason, because that night at 1 a.m., I did receive a phone call from the neonate who was on that night, saying that Olivia is on she's on an oscillator receiving 400 breaths per minute. Her belly is very angry, very inflamed, very red, very hard.
Hold on. Tell us what an oscillator is. Like, for those that never even heard this word, what exactly was that about?
Absolutely. So it essentially breathes for the baby, and it pushes air into the infant. And for Olivia, it was 400 breaths per minute.
Okay.
She did eventually try breathing over it. They do say that the babies do try to do that. But it is a very intense looking piece of equipment. It's very loud. It's very big. And for, a first timer who's never seen it, it can be very intimidating. And, when you see your baby in this isolette with the top up, you really just see that air pushing into the stomach, and her stomach just moving up and down as quickly as you could have ever imagined. So we came to the hospital, and the neonatologist, was already in the room. There were 3 other nurses in the room as well. At this point, Mia had a separate nurse, just so that our nurse for that night can just focus on Olivia with the other 2 and the neonate. And so the neonatologist was telling us the what ifs of what this could be, what this might look like. And it was a lot. It was a lot of information. It was very overwhelming. I was, of course, a wreck. As I'm sure any parent would be. And they didn't know if she was going to make it that night because of the oscillator, because, all of her levels were kind of scattered. Whenever they would do a blood draw, which was, I believe it was every hour, they were checking to see how she was doing. And it was just a very unpredictable night. We, of course, had a lot of hope. I can't even tell you how many times I prayed over her and sang to her and read to her. Just really trying anything just to let her know, hey, we're here, we're with you, we've got this, we'll push through. We stayed there all night, even though we were, encouraged to go back to our room, but we couldn't leave her.
Of course.
And so after about 2 hours, everything started looking a little bit better. Things started going more uphill. She was starting to be more regulated. They were able to kind of decrease some of those settings on the oscillator. She was on the oscillator for, I believe it was 2 days.
Okay.
And then 2 days later, let's say, that's when they tried to take her off of the oscillator and back on the ventilator. And it was successful, thankfully. And her breathing was more stable. Everything just looked so much better. So thankfully we did overcome that first night. And so when the surgeon came to look at her, they predicted that it was going to be NEC.
Okay.
But they didn't know to what extent, because from the outside it can look one way, and then once you open her up and really see on the inside, it can just be completely different. Based on how well she was doing, they really thought that she had maybe some, more on the mild scale of NEC, right? Like maybe some inflamed intestine, maybe a little bit of dead intestine.
Okay.
However, her surgery was scheduled. We went in for the surgery. It was an exploratory surgery just to kind of see what was happening.
Okay.
And we actually received the worst case scenario, which was that she had less than 30% viable intestine. And so just due to the nature of preemies and their amazing bodies and what they do, the surgeon told us that she just irrigated everything, stitched her back up, and said, you know what, we're going to let her sit. We're going to let her body do what it needs to do. And we will check back in 8 weeks.
Okay.
It was the longest 2 months.
I can't even imagine.
Even thinking back to it now, I still can't imagine how we got through those 2 months, but we did. She was NPO, so she was not receiving any milk feedings at this time. She was just on TPN and IV fluids, which was also very hard because as she got older, right, like she understood that she was getting hungry. She felt hunger. And so seeing that and seeing her feel that was heartbreaking, completely heartbreaking. The speech pathologist worked so hard with her on just different non-nutritive sucking with the pacifier. And, we would just try different things for her just to make her comfortable and make her feel at ease and kind of overcome that hunger sensation. And so now fast forward to those 8 weeks, we had, again, of course, it was scheduled. So we planned on being at the hospital around 7 a.m. that morning, just so that we had enough time because it was scheduled for 10 a.m.
Okay.
So that we figured that would give us enough time to spend some time with Mia, spend a little more time with Olivia, and just kind of settle in and get ready for surgery. While we were in the elevator going up to the NICU, when we received a phone call from the night nurse who was on that night, asking how far we live because they moved her surgery up to 7:30. And we were already there, right?
Thank goodness.
But thank goodness, because otherwise we would have seen her before because we lived an hour away. And so, of course, now we're in panic. Well, I'm in panic mode.
Of course.
Because now I go from having 3 hours to having, maybe 20 minutes with my daughter. And so we come into the room, and of course, there's already about 6 or 7 nurses in there. The respiratory therapist was in there. We had a speech therapist in there. The neonate was in there. Eventually, our surgeon was in there too. Our pediatric surgeon was absolutely phenomenal. We had her for all 3 of her surgeries. And so they did what they needed to do. I was able to hold her at least. I couldn't do kangaroo, of course, but I was able to at least hold her in my arms one last time before that surgery. And so my husband and I always prayed over her before she went on for any procedure, any surgery. And so we started praying. I, of course, immediately broke out into tears. And so then, to only make it more emotional, but in the most beautiful way, our primary day nurse, she was there. And so she quickly joined in and she took over and she said a prayer over her. And when I say every nurse in the room was in tears, everybody was in tears. It was just such a beautiful moment, you know, and something that we needed. Just to kind of give us that, you know, closure that everything's going to be okay. We're all in this together. Right. And that's really what it felt like.
You really need that. So like so when they're going in for the surgery, right? So what NEC is basically that when she was born, and correct me if I'm wrong, when she was born, she basically had like a tiny little hole in her intestine. And because of this, bacteria and stuff kind of leaks out of it. And so it leaks into her abdomen, and then it could start kind of infiltrating her other organs, that this bacteria. So
yes, it can, while also inflaming and essentially killing some of her small intestine. And then that degree varies. Mild case is, you know, a few places. Worst case scenario is again what we discovered Olivia had, which was less than 30% viable. And so she went down for surgery. We went down to the cafeteria for coffee, and we were just waiting. And about, maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours later, we received a call from our primary day nurse that, it was probably an hour and a half, that her surgery is over and she's heading back up.
Quick.
Quick, very quick. And so I was very nervous because of how quick it was.
Yes.
And so she told us to come back upstairs. So we did. And at that point, she was immediately in tears and began hugging me, saying that Olivia had the best case scenario. Wow. And I think we hugged for at least 10 minutes. Wow. I'm not kidding. It was just, she's a miracle. She is truly a walking, living miracle. She had maybe 10 centimeters, right, give or take, on the measurement of small intestine that did have to be cut out, that did not regrow. Okay. But everything else was beautiful, healthy, and pink again. And so they placed a temporary stoma, because where that small intestine was cut out, it was where the small meets the large. And so because of inflammation, they wanted to let that heal. So she had a temporary stoma for about 7 weeks.
Let's tell them what a stoma is, right?
Oh,
so it's
absolutely.
Basically like what people would see as like a colostomy bag. So it's basically they put her, there's like a little exit of, of waste that would go into a tiny little bag because she's a tiny little baby. And then that is basically used for the time that her body is recovering. And stomas, whether you are a preemie or an adult, sometimes they have to be put in temporarily while your guts kind of go back to normal. And then they could be taken out and reversed depending on exactly what the issue is. Okay. So she comes out,
you so much.
That's okay. I am well versed in the weirdly in the art of the stoma. So she comes out, best case scenario, only this 10 little millimeter, I don't even know what that's, the one is totally different than the other, but a tiny little piece has to come out, which is a definite miraculous turnaround from what had originally happened. And it is because when your babies are born, they're so used to growing so quickly, and so many things happen to little teeny tiny babies. It's unbelievable. So her body was basically able to miraculously regenerate. And what they were going in for was they were going in to kind of like scrape and remove any of the bad bits so that it wouldn't keep infiltrating into the other parts. But you don't really know because an MRI can't tell and an ultrasound can't tell. The only thing that could tell are eyes. So the surgeons that go in, and this is also, by the way, for those of you who don't know, like this is one of the differences of why we always say at Twiniversity that it's important to know your level NICU.
Yes.
Because even the machine that she was originally on is typically only found in a level 4 NICU. But the surgeons, you may have the opportunity to have the surgeons in a level 3 or a level 4. The difference is that a level 3, they would have to be called in sometimes from other hospitals, but in a level 4, those doctors are on staff so you could see them all the time. They're quickly able to, react, especially in cases like Judy, where, the surgery time changed. So,
Yes.
okay. So now I just wanted to make sure that everybody is caught up to date, because the funny thing is like, this is so second nature to you. And like the lingo that you use is very common, right? So like me,
Right.
I'm speaking your same language, but then I'm like, okay, they have no idea what the heck we're saying.
Right.
So I wanted to make sure that they were all caught up. Okay, so now you go up, you have this wonderful reunion with the nurse, which is so great. And also, if you guys notice that Judy's saying primary nurse, primary night, primary day, and that is because you could sometimes, depending on the severity of your baby's issues, they might assign a primary nurse, because then those nurses become a lot more familiar with learning how to play your baby like an instrument, right? So they'll know how they're fed. They'll know their pooping schedule. Instead of having people coming in and out and changing staff every day, having a primary is definitely preferred. And even if you're in there for a short amount of time, you guys could always you could say, can we have a primary nurse? So even if you're there for like a week, understand that it's not just somebody who's going to be in the NICU for months. You could literally, if you feel more comfortable, especially if you're a new mom that has any issues with anxiety and you have a lot of comfort with one particular nurse, you could specifically say, can I have that person be my primary day, my primary night? Okay, we're caught up. Thank you, Judy.
Okay. Oh my gosh, no problem.
Love it. Okay, so we go back and now you finally see her. And so Olivia is laying there in her wonderful glory. And how did, when you first saw her, what was your initial reaction?
Oh my goodness. I prayed and I thanked God for the fact that she was truly a miracle, and she just looked so good and so at peace, and that was the biggest thing for me. Because again, we didn't know what was going to come of this. Right.
Yeah.
And so we had another 7-week span, but in this span, we were finally able to reintroduce fortified breast milk to her. She was starting to be more playful again. She was just able to be more mobile, at least to an extent. And it was just such a turnaround for her, for us, everybody. However, we did run into the next hurdle, which was that she was not taking a bottle. Or she would only take maybe half an ounce.
Okay.
And she would usually spit it back up. We would always have to feed her through the NG. There were times that she did completely refuse the bottle as well. And so we started to have the difficult conversation, let's say at that time, of a G-tube placement. And so that was a hard decision. We knew the G-tube placement was the best decision, and we are very grateful that we did go with that route. But it was hard as a mom to just be okay with that. Only because I was then thinking in the future, cosmetic wise, comparing herself to her sister who doesn't have this scar across her belly, who now won't have another scar from a G-tube placement, right? And so that was, again, just me kind of going through the motions of what that could look like. But then also had a turning point of, well, these are her battle wounds, right? These are her battle scars. She's here because of that. And, so I told myself right then and there that I will always teach her to love those scars and to tell her story, because it's it's a beautiful story. And, if down the line, if she ever wants something done, then we will make that happen. Right. But, we did agree to the G-tube placement because the neonatologist told us that they will not place it without our consent.
Of course.
However, however, they did forewarn us, though, that because of the fact that she was not progressing with that NG tube, that NG won't last that long, right?
Okay.
We would eventually have to come back for an outpatient surgery to get one placed.
Okay.
If she didn't pick up on the bottle feeding and progress upwards with it.
Okay.
And so because she was already going in for a third surgery to remove the stoma, and to reconnect her small intestine to her large. We okayed that the G tube gets placed at that time,
Okay.
so that we don't have to reopen her for a fourth time.
Good.
And put her through another surgery.
Okay.
And it was the best decision we ever made. Of course, it came with
imagine.
a lot of learning and
Yeah.
a lot of firsts and, some mess ups along the way, but I mean, it's a learning curve. And even still, it's a learning curve. We still have the G tube, but she is eating everything by mouth. She has really, really come such a long way in her feeding. And now we're only down to 2 feedings a day with an overnight continuous feeding, which means, of course, for anyone listening who is unaware of what that means, she's connected to her G tube, and she gets fed for 9 hours continuously. And we refill her bag every 3 hours with more milk. But aside from that, she gets 2 gravity feedings a day. So we hold a syringe, the milk kind of goes through the extension into her G tube. And aside from those 2 feedings, she eats everything else by mouth. And her and her sister, I mean, they are doing so phenomenally. And we are working very diligently with speech for not only speech, but also for feeding, and with PT, and developmental therapists, but it's all coming together beautifully and they are just blossoming. It's amazing to see.
Unbelievable. I mean, honestly, like that's a lot of battles. And so for those of you that are listening, to go back to the, I want to do like the terminology for dummies. That's us. So the NG tube is the one that's manually placed through her little schnozola when you are in the NICU. And so that is very, 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 very typical. And it's a tube that goes into her little belly, and you could actually do chest feeding with an NG tube too, which you could put, basically you take the little piece and hook it up to your nipple. There's so many crazy things that we could do when with that tube, but not only internally with the babies, but externally you could use that as well. But then the other thing is once you can't have that for too long. And so that's another thing that's very, very typical NICU, because so many babies have that. And if they can't feed with that, which they use it as a supplemental way until the babies usually could feed on their own. And so in addition to all of the battles, they also have these Brady's and DSATs things, which are also very typical NICU, which means that babies are like, do I breathe? Do I swallow? What do I do? I don't know what to do right now. What do I do? There's only one way to go down, and I don't know which way to happen. So until the babies figure that out, sometimes they use the NG tube. But in the case of Olivia, they were like, dude, this isn't going to last long. She's still going to need a ton more calories. And so then it's basically a feeding tube is what a G tube would be. And that's gastronomy tube. So it's a little tube that's on the outside of her teeny tiny tummy. And so when she has the continuous feed, it's like a bag that's connected to her like by a belt. Is that how that works for how does the continuous feed work?
Sure. So the extension is obviously connected to her G tube for those 9 hours. And that extension goes to a bag that we then hang on a pole, and it's connected to a pump. And so that pump, we set to a specific rate and volume to dispense every hour into her. And so because she is, sorry, go ahead.
Could she like run around and stuff like for those, or is it only 10 minutes per 9 hours? Like what's the timing of that?
Sure. So because it is overnight, she is sleeping through it. And because she is laying down flat, we do have it running at only 30 mLs per hour. Okay. So she receives 30 mLs every hour for 9 hours.
Okay.
Now, prior to her gravity feedings, when she was just, before they were eating.
Tell us about the gravity feeding. So basically a gravity feeding is that you take the tube and you hold a syringe up in the air, and the syringe is then placed into, the little extension is placed into her G tube, and then you pour the stuff in old school style, and you're like, here we go. We're going to have whatever. Almost like you see the people doing like a keg stand is always what I envision for that. I don't know why that's a horrible analogy, but like people who do that. So basically she's doing like funnels is really what it is. So you do 2 of those a day in addition.
We do. And with that, the higher you hold it, the quicker the milk goes, and vice versa. And so here's little Olivia.
Oh man, we were waiting on you. Hi, Boo.
I know.
She's so cute.
Thanks. But yes, before she was on the gravity feedings, she was connected to her pump every time she was eating. And so unfortunately, she did have to be stationary for that.
Yeah.
Just because when they are mobile, it does get hard because you don't want them to pull on the
of course,
on the extension. And so she would be placed in her swing, and we would just entertain her in her swing while she ate. That feeding, however, went for almost an hour. An hour every 3 hours. But she's a little rock star, and she would get fussy at times, but we would read, we would play. Her sister would stand next to her swing, so we made it work.
That's
and
so
now
great.
We have moved past that. Yes.
She's so sweet. How old are they today? Like, what's our big milestone?
Yes. So they will be 21 months actual on Christmas Eve on the 24th.
Aww.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
18 months adjusted.
Eve, 20. That is unbelievable. And now, how is it working with her running around the house and being a crazy toddler and having a G-tube? Because she doesn't give a crap. She's just got things to do. So how do you manage that?
She is a little lady on a mission, her and her sister. The G-tube really does not seem to impact her at all. I think as she got older, she's become more aware of the fact that she does have something in her belly. She's, if we ask her where it is, she can point to it. So she knows she has something there. If she's ever sliding off of a couch or, on her stomach, she does position herself in a way that wouldn't necessarily impact her G-tube. So I think that's just something that comes with the nature of it. I think they just know and they learn to adjust. The only downfall I will say of the G-tube is that the balloon inevitably will burst or leak or pop. And there's no say how or when that happens. You just kind of know because the G-tube starts coming out of her stomach a little bit or fully, which has happened to us before too. But yeah, I would say that's the only downfall of it, Otherwise it really, it doesn't seem to impact her. And if anything, it helps us because she's growing and getting the nutrients she needs. And
absolutely,
she doesn't have a tube going down her nose.
Yeah. Which is really great because then you could rip it out. Her sister could rip it out. So
easily.
With twinnies and a G-tube, that's like there you go. That's a comedy routine right there, ripping tubes out.
Yes.
So, oh my gosh. So now what happens next? Okay. So now we know that she has this little piece that's missing. Do they expect it to, what's the healing process like? What's the prognosis for the G-tube? Like, how long do we still have to basically deal with the ramifications from NEC?
Sure. So there's no end date, unfortunately, for the G-tube. However, they do base it off of how much is she taking by mouth? How often is she taking food by mouth? Is she growing? Is she able to sustain? And again, just grow without getting the formula through the G-tube or just extra nutrients through the G-tube. So we are working very closely with our feeding clinic, which involves a nutritionist, another speech pathologist, and a GI doctor, a gastroenterologist. And so we are working, like I said, very closely with them. They monitor her growth, her progress. And they are the ones who essentially make that decision on when we're going to decrease more of the feedings, try to increase some of the solid feedings. And once they deem that she no longer needs the G-tube and no longer needs the formula feedings through the G-tube, and she's taking liquid by mouth, which she does, she takes water, but she is still very hesitant on things other than. So once she is successful across all, in all domains, let's say, that is when they have that conversation that she she is ready to be weaned off of it. However, they do keep the G-tube placed for 3 to 6 months after.
Okay. Post, yeah.
They deem that, yes, just to make sure that she doesn't, in fact, still need it after they decide that, because it's easier to still have it and reuse it versus take it out and have to replace one. And so once we get to that point, and let's say the 6 months pass, and we don't need it anymore, that's when she goes in. It's bedside procedure. They pull the water out of the balloon that sits. And so the balloon is what keeps the G-tube in place, right? It's on the internal wall. And so they just remove the water, pull the G-tube out, and they just patch her up. No stitches are involved here. The body just heals itself. And that's pretty much
Dude,
how that goes.
Humans are amazing. Baby humans are so much more amazing.
Oh, they are resilient.
Holy smoke, girl, you have been
resilient
through so much. And how do you even like get up? Because there's people that are going through kind of what you do, right? And there's two ways that you could take this. You could take it, I'm going downward spiral. Why am I being punished for this, right? This is so much to handle. How do you not do that? Like, how are you like, oh, they're wilds, there they are. And, you know, where you're telling me you're going away for Christmas, I would be like hiding in a bunker, not leaving the house ever again. Like, how do you just do this? How do you be you?
You know, I don't know. I am trying to figure that out myself. No, but in all honesty, I am still in school. I'm actually graduating with my master's in May.
I can't believe that. When I read that,
in
I was like,
speech
what
pathology.
Is going on? Girl.
Yes. And I'm currently in my clinical placements right now as well. But I do have help from my mom. She is a rock star. She watches the girls Monday through Friday while I'm at my clinical placement. And then when I return, I take on mommy duties again. But I will say, I think the one thing I always did was to do something for me at some point every single day, whether it's 5 minutes or an hour at the gym. I just did my best to try to do something just to keep my sanity. But I mean, really, it's cliche to say, but, you know, I always told myself, like, if Olivia can go through all of this and, you know, I'm looking at her now and she's running around and she's happy, and, you know, how can I be anything but that? You know, how can I sit here and complain about being tired when she had 5.5 months of everything that she went through, you know? And so that her story she is my inspiration, truly. Just, you know, with how tiny she was and how much she overcame with that little tiny, unbelievably incredible body of hers, and her strength and just her resilience. And even Mia's, you know, Mia was a huge part of that too. She was in the room for all of it. And so I just, you know, do what I can.
You're doing more than you can. For the record, you're doing a lot more than you can. So just take a second there. So that's it. So nobody's like, yeah, let's go get a master's degree now and take care of twins. Forget about it. One that has a G-tube that needs gravity feed. No, let's just do some more. Let's do clinical hours on top of that. Why not? Let's just add that.
You know, coffee is a marvelous thing.
Amen. Truth.
Coffee and a good glass of red wine sometimes.
Beautiful.
Maybe not always, but sometimes.
Too delicious. But I'm more of a Tito's and soda girl. So
see, I do like my Grey Goose and soda with lime.
See, thank you. 2 limes. Don't give me 1 lime.
Me too. Every time I always say 2 limes and people laugh at me, but it adds so much more. I always ask for a second.
I agree, and I don't know why. When my family mocks me, and I'm like, dude, I just want what I want. What are you going to do? That's
every time.
I love that, Judy. Oh, that makes me so happy.
We just found something in common.
That's it. Oh, we got a lot more in common. I mean, honestly,
we sure
are we definitely need a cocktail night. That's a Zoom cocktail party is what
that would be wonderful.
Have. We
with really, our 2 limes.
Yes, amen. I also like the True Lime packet. I don't know if you found out about those yet.
No.
Google it. It's called True Lime. It's a little packet. That's it. So shout out to True Lime.
Will
Feel free
do.
to hook it up.
Yes.
Hook some sisters up. True Lime. I buy it on Amazon.
True
It's the
lime.
best. Yeah. See, look,
Thank
Mandy,
you, because
write that
I
down.
cannot
Thank you.
I cannot do Rose's lime syrup.
No, me neither. I don't like any of that jazz. So I didn't know if they knew that they were getting a side order of how to create a perfect cocktail on this podcast, but I'm glad.
But here
that
you go.
they
You're
stayed.
welcome.
That's it.
I
Because
am
this
too.
is
Thank you
this
for
is
staying.
reality, right? So like if you think about it, you have to like, honestly, Judy's finding like the moments to celebrate, which is great. But like I'm really curious. Do you think that you going for your master's in speech pathology, which clearly I need something because I can't even say it, but do you think that that positively affects the way that you see the outcome of Olivia?
I truly believe that that's a huge part in it. Yes, because I have my knowledge base, right? I have my foundation in certain things, and maybe it's not all of the medical side of it, but I do have like the feeding aspect of it and the swallowing, and all things feeding, swallowing, and speech, for these little babies, you know. And so that actually, our story has inspired me to kind of switch my goal in this field. You know, I do love my pediatric population. I always will. And I'm not saying I'm never going to go to it or be there. However, after what we went through, I do have a passion for working in the NICU with these little preemies and micro preemies and the families, you know, I feel like I can give so much, not only on a professional level, but also on a personal level. I want to create some kind of program for families because, you know, especially now after COVID, things are it's so difficult. And really all families really have right now are Facebook groups, you know, and maybe if they have mutual friends or whatever the case may be. And so I want to provide and create some kind of program for these NICU parents to really let them connect and, you know, and just have someone to be there, you know, and answer questions and, you know, have someone to tell them, you know, I've been in your shoes. I know what you're going through, or at least to an extent know what you're going through. Here's what I did. Here's what helped me, you know, or just having that outlet to vent to somebody who has been there, I think is huge. Because I myself had someone who was in the NICU who I was able to turn to when I felt, you know, when I started to maybe lose some hope or I was tired or I just didn't know what else I could do. Right. It's so nice having that, someone there who can understand what it's like to be in that hospital every day. And so I want to just give back in that way to other families and just to the babies. I love these babies.
Absolutely. I'm going to introduce you to the people at Graham's Foundation. I don't know if you've heard of that, but that is, so on and off the record, they are an unbelievable nonprofit organization that specifically deals with micropreemies. And it was started by a twin parent. And so Graham, so it's Graham like the cracker, not like the weight, the unit of measurement. Yeah. So he was a twin, unfortunately, that passed away after. And so his dad, Nick Hall, created this Graham's Foundation, and now they are a nationwide support network for micropreemies. So I love it. I would have told you about them, but there are so many twin parent volunteers within Graham's Foundation. It's an organization that we've always supported here at Twiniversity since we found out about this. I don't even, maybe 10 years ago or so. So you have to definitely connect with them. And for those of you that are out there right now, just know that they do exist. That's one of the wonderful organizations. But I know that some people look to like March of Dimes, but the bigger the organization, the harder it is to get that one-on-one support that you need.
Agreed.
And so it's nice to see, you know, if there is a local preemie support network. And then, you know, with your case, Judy, you had like micro preemies, right? So it's not just preemies, right? Because I had preemies at 34. You had micro preemies depending on, I don't actually know what the cutoff is. Do you know what the cutoff of preemie versus micro preemie is?
I want to say at 28 weeks, it goes to preemie. I could be wrong, but I know, gosh, I think it's.
Okay, I Googled it. So perfect. At week 29, so when a baby is born 29. At 30 to 36 weeks, they are considered to be late preterm. 29 to 32, they're very preterm, and 26 to 28 are moderately preterm, and 23 to 25 is micro.
Mm-hmm.
So that's way too many qualifications. I don't even know what's going on anymore. It's a lot of breakdown. So I am considered late preterm, apparently.
Oh my goodness.
There you go. So now, how long was Olivia in the NICU? What was her kind of, when she checked out, what was her hotel bill for the time that she was there?
Oh my goodness. So high. Thank God for good insurance. But she was there for 5.5 months. 164 days to be exact.
Wow.
And Mia was there for 3 months, 99 days. So once Mia came home, it did become a lot more difficult because then we had one at home, one in the NICU. And so we said that no matter what, we would always still visit Olivia every single day. We just would not be able to stay as long as we normally would have.
Yeah.
And so we would be with Olivia for, I would say, about 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah.
And then come home to Mia, and either my parents would watch Mia for that time or my husband's parents would watch Mia for that time. It just depended. But I mean, really, everyone was hands on deck. Everyone was so helpful with us and with the situation, with the girls. And of course, you know, you have all these other things and factors to think about because Mia is, you know, a fresh baby from the NICU, right?
Of course.
So there's hurdles there, but we got through it all, and there's no way we'd be able to do it alone. No way.
You are unbelievable.
We had the best support from friends, from family. Oh my gosh, especially from friends. I mean, everybody was just so willing to just give. It was almost overwhelming, but it was so beautiful, you know, and that support is just huge.
Listen, and
when you're going through what you're going through,
you're putting it right back out there. So even like this of you know, being able to tell your story and people hear, because they get so panicky, right? And if you start going down the Google road of NEC, like, you could literally be devastated. And so we really want to change that trajectory of the people that are Googling and be like, hey, listen, you guys, I want to tell you about Olivia. You got to meet Judy. Like, we want to be able to do that. And you guys are such a success story. 100%. And it's so nice to, you know, have that hope and know that we could have a positive outcome too, no matter how scary that it looks in the beginning. So Judy, honestly, sincerely, from like my family to yours and the rest of Twiniversity, like, thank you so much for doing this.
Anytime.
And even with the puppies running around like crazy and like, that is unbelievable. No, what are you sorry about? I don't know why. Like, it's so great, because then for those that are watching on YouTube, you see how sweet they are and their cute little ponytails. And it's just the cutest. They look like Pebbles Flintstone with their,
Yes, they sure do. And I love putting a big bow in front of it too. I almost did for today, just in case if they got on camera.
They're the sweetest.
But I didn't.
That's what we need. So you never know what's going to happen, but you should say, and I was telling Judy before we started, I said, there's a quote that's like, you know, you could live 3 days without or 5 days without food, like 3 days without water, but you can't live a moment without hope.
You cannot, especially in this kind of setting, in this kind of situation. Yeah. Hope is really what gets you through.
Hope, really
faith,
is.
And a lot of support.
Amen. Like, honestly, that's so fantastic. Judy, thank you so much. And so if we have questions, could we stalk you? Could our whole audience stalk you?
Please. I would love that.
Oh, you'll regret
I am
that.
an open book.
Oh, that's it. So guys, if you have any questions for me, for Judy, if you want to ask Olivia a question when she's ready to start speaking, she will answer that too. Maybe you want a little chat with Mia. We will get it all there. So you can email us at community@twiniversity.com whenever you'd like. We are always right here. And then also, if you don't feel like it, just drop us a message on any social platform. Literally anywhere. We have no creativity. We're just at Twiniversity, every single place. And like I say on every single podcast, truthfully, if you found this beneficial and you want to help find the other Judys out there that had the other Olivias, then please like and subscribe to this podcast and rate and review it, because those freaking algorithms hold us back. And our goal is to make sure that people know that we are here. We are here to support them, that people like Judy are here, and you could have really wonderful stories of success and hope, no matter what that original prognosis was, that you should never, never, never stop looking for the sunshine outside of the clouds. So thank you so much again, Judy. I'm so happy for you. I can't wait for the girls to grow up. And then we hear how you drove them crazy and she had to lay there for 9 hours. And she's like, it was nuts. I can't wait till she's complaining about that. That's when you know that you've had success.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
You got it. And guys, thank you so much for listening. And until next time, guys, see you later, alligators.